Please like the video and share it so that it reaches many more people and you get sawaba, or rewards from Allah. This could be a sawabe jariyah or continuous reward for you long after you are gone.
Volume 7, Book 62, number 120. Narrated by Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, "A woman should not fast, optional fasts, except with her husband's permission if he is at home, staying with her." Volume 7, Book 62, number 121. Narrated by Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, "If a man invites his wife to sleep with him and she refuses to come to him, then the angels send their curses on her till morning." Volume 7, Book 62, number 122. Narrated by Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, "If a woman spends the night deserting her husband's bed, does not sleep with him, then the angels send their curses on her till she comes back to her husband." Volume 7, Book 62, number 123. Narrated by Abu Hurairah. Allah's Apostle said, "It is not lawful for a lady to fast, nawafil, without the permission of her husband when he is at home, and she should not allow anyone to enter his house except with his permission. And if she spends of his wealth, on charitable purposes, without being ordered by him, he will get half of the reward." Volume 7, Book 62, number 124. Narrated by Osama. The Prophet said, "I stood at the gate of paradise and saw that the majority of the people who entered it were the poor, while the wealthy were stopped at the gate, for the accounts. But the companions of the fire were ordered to be taken to the fire. Then I stood at the gate of the fire and saw that the majority of those who entered it were women." Volume 7, Book 62, number 125. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas. During the lifetime of Allah's Apostle, the sun eclipsed. Allah's Apostle offered the prayer of the eclipse, and so did the people along with him. He performed a long qiyam, standing posture, during which Surat al-Baqarah could have been recited. Then he performed a prolonged bowing, then raised his head and stood for a long time, which was slightly less than that of the first qiyam, and recited Quran. Then he performed a prolonged bowing again. But the period was shorter than the period of the first bowing. Then he stood up and then prostrated. Again he stood up, but this time the period of standing was less than the first standing. Then he performed a prolonged bowing but of a lesser duration than the first. Then he stood up again for a long time but for a lesser duration than the first. Then he performed a prolonged bowing, but of lesser duration than the first, and then he again stood up, and then prostrated and then finished his prayer. By then the sun eclipse had cleared. The Prophet then said, "The sun and the moon are two signs among the signs of Allah, and they do not eclipse because of the death or birth of someone, so when you observe the eclipse, remember Allah, offer the eclipse prayer." They, the people, said, "O Allah's Apostle, we saw you stretching your hand to take something at this place of yours, then we saw you stepping backward." He said, "I saw paradise, or paradise was shown to me, and I stretched my hand to pluck a bunch of grapes, and had I plucked it, you would have eaten of it as long as this world exists." Then I saw the hell fire, and I have never before seen such a horrible sight as that, and I saw that the majority of its dwellers were women. The people asked, "O Allah's Apostle, what is the reason for that?" He replied, "Because of their ungratefulness." It was said, "Do they disbelieve in Allah? Are they ungrateful to Allah?" He replied, "They are not thankful to their husbands and are ungrateful for the favors done to them. Even if you do good to one of them all your life, when she sees some harshness from you, she will say, 'I have never seen any good from you.'" Volume 7, Book 62, number 126. Narrated by Imran. The Prophet said, "I looked at paradise and saw that the majority of its residents were the poor, and I looked at the hell fire and saw that the majority of its residents were women." Volume 7, Book 62, number 127. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As. Allah's Apostle said, "O Abdullah, have I not been informed that you fast all the day and stand in prayer all night?" I said, "Yes, O Allah's Apostle." He said, "Do not do that. Observe the fast sometimes and also leave the fast, at other times. Stand up for the prayer at night and also sleep at night. Your body has a right over you. Your eyes have a right over you and your wife has a right over you." Volume 7, Book 62, number 128. Narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, "All of you are guardians and are responsible for your wards. The ruler is a guardian and the man is a guardian of his family. The lady is a guardian and is responsible for her husband's house and his offspring, and so all of you are guardians and are responsible for your wards." Volume 7, Book 62, number 129. Narrated by Anas. Allah's Apostle took an oath that he would not visit his wives for 1 month, and he sat in an upper room belonging to him. Then, on the 29th day he came down. It was said, "O Allah's Apostle, you had taken an oath not to visit your wives for 1 month." He said, "The present month is of 29 days. Volume 7, Book 62, number 130. Narrated by Salama. The Prophet took an oath that he would not enter upon some of his wives for 1 month. But when 29 days had elapsed, he went to them in the morning or evening. It was said to him, "O Allah's Prophet, you had taken an oath that you would not enter upon him for 1 month." He replied, "The month can be of 29 days. Volume 7, Book 62, number 131. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. One morning we saw the wives of the Prophet weeping, and every one of them had her family with her. I went to the mosque and found that it was crowded with people. Then, Umar bin al-Khattab came and went up to the Prophet who was in his upper room. He greeted him but nobody answered. He greeted again, but nobody answered. Then the gatekeeper called him and he entered upon the Prophet, and asked, "Have you divorced your wives?" The Prophet said, "No, but I have taken an oath not to go to them for 1 month." So the Prophet stayed away from his wives for 29 days and then entered upon them. Volume 7, Book 62, number 132. Narrated by Abdullah bin Zamma. The Prophet said, "None of you should flog his wife as he flogs a slave and then have sexual intercourse with her in the last part of the day." Volume 7, Book 62, number 133. Narrated by Aisha. An Ansari woman gave her daughter in marriage and the hair of the latter started falling out. The Ansari women came to the Prophet and mentioned that to him and said, "My daughter's husband suggested that I should let her wear false hair." The Prophet said, "No, don't do that. For Allah sends His curses upon such ladies who lengthen their hair artificially." Volume 7, Book 62, number 134. Narrated by Aisha. Regarding the verse, "If a wife fears cruelty or desertion on her husband's part," 4.128, it concerns the woman whose husband does not want to keep her with him any longer, but wants to divorce her and marry some other lady, so she says to him, "Keep me and do not divorce me, and then marry another woman, and you may neither spend on me, nor sleep with me." This is indicated by the statement of Allah, "There is no blame on them if they arrange an amicable settlement between them both, and such settlement is better." 4.128